Yes, so it seems like it works now. Before we really dive into the topic, I would just like to briefly introduce where I'm from. Yes, I'm from Czech Republic, which is in the heart of the Europe, very small country, and I'm from Ostrava. Usually people, if you are talking about Czech Republic, you mostly visit Prague as a very nice historical town. I'm from the opposite side of the country, which is very industrial. And that's why also our study programs dedicated to occupational safety and process safety were settled there, because we are in very close interaction with our industry, such with the mining and the steel companies. That's how the region was influenced from the very beginning. We as a Technical University of Ostrava, we are here almost more than 170 years, and we have 7 faculties and 2 research centers. You can see the faculties here. We are the youngest one, Faculty of Safety Engineering. We started in 2002 our existence, let's say, as we called it, Faculty of Safety Engineering, and it was due to the demand from the industry. They wanted highly educated safety professionals. That was the reason why we have the whole faculty dedicated to safety and security and safety engineering in general, or industrial safety, if you want to say it like that. And we have the whole faculty is just dedicated to safety, which is quite unique, not only in the Czech Republic, but also in Europe. We have 4 departments. I'm personally from the Department of Occupational and Process Safety, and we are providing at our department 2 study programs, the Bachelor in Occupational and Process Safety and the follow-up Master Safety Engineering. So it's a different approach than you have here. What you're studying here, the environmental and occupational health, it's usually settled on the faculties of medicine in our country.
Sorry.
No problem. It's not nice to hear myself twice, but we will survive somehow. I would like to open the talk with several questions which I'm still wondering about, and to be honest, I don't have a clear answers to them, but hopefully you can also think with me about them. First of all, are we really able to work with a risk concept? Because as you know, we are dealing with health and safety, but most often we are trying to describe it via risk concept. The other question is, if we are really assessing all the risks which are connected to the workplace or occupation or the place itself, and if we do it really correctly, if our frameworks, methodologies allow us to have the overall picture of the hazards and risks which can endanger the people while they are working, how the new technologies and approaches are, like for example, also artificial intelligence is influencing on what we are doing in risk assessment. And my big question always is, if we really see the whole picture, or we just have a small puzzles which are not connected together. Let's start with the 3 key principles. Key principles that I would say within the topic we are now exploring, I would like to focus on 3 principles. First of all, risk as a starting point of our discipline. As I said, we are dealing with health and safety, but it's not easy to say that somebody is healthy or something is safe, right? That's why we explore and started to use the concept of hazard, exposure, and risk. And risk is understood something like an antonym to the safety, so that's why. We also have a legal, let's say, foundations for that, because all the employers need to ensure occupational health and safety with regard to the risk. So again, we see that it's the starting point. And last but not least, it's good to understand that the occupational risks or risks in the area of occupational health and safety include both acute and chronic risks, which is evident, for example, from the definition of which is stated in the ISO standard 45001, which is dealing with safety management systems. What we sometimes see is that the risk is understood or described via non-compliance with something. And I'm always wondering, is it a good approach? Maybe it's very practical, but is it giving us a good overview of the risks and over what can happen? Here are just several examples which are from the OIRA tool, Online Interactive Risk Assessment, which I will explore with you later on. So you see that, for example, risk is described as that the disinfection system is not established. And my question is, can we then see the scenario? Because for me, and I'm sure that for your discipline, it's very important as well, the exposure or even scenario is what makes the risks communicable and understandable for others. The second principle I would like to focus on is the prevention. The prevention as a key approach promoted at a global level by International Labour Organization. We believe, and I think we all in the discipline believe, that the occupational injuries and diseases are preventable. And so our discipline, occupational health and safety, is about preventing the illnesses and injuries from occurring. That's our job, that's our aim. And how we do it? Through the risk assessment, because risk assessment is really the key procedure. We need the information, the data for further decision making, and that's the key point. So we will build on these three principles and have a look on the frameworks. Within the European Union, we have the key legal framework is the Framework Directive from 1989, which is requiring all the employers to do or carry out the risk assessment. Also in 1996, European Union Commission came with the guidance for the employers on how to carry out the risk assessment. It's very general. It's just showing the step-by-step approach and telling the employers what it really means once we are saying risk assessment, nothing more. Later on, other institutions and organizations like ISA, International Safety and Security Association, came up with some supportive guidelines. Also, HSC, UK, Health and Safety Executive, developed a lot of practical guides and checklists and templates for risk assessment, ILO as well. But they are mostly, let's say, very simple. They are focused on small and medium enterprises. They want to support them. Makes perfectly sense. Some of them are more theoretical, some of them are more practical. But let's say they are not really giving you much. ISA, as they came up with separate guidelines for different hazard categories like chemicals, noise, and so on, I would say they're more practical and you can find very nice checklists and advice within their guidelines. And we have a first full question. I will ask Donald to make it possible also for the people who are joining us online. Is it working, Donald? Already? Yes. So my question is, what up to your experience, up to your knowledge so far, does the risk assessment procedure include? And you have a multiple choice. So really have a look on the processes and tell me what up to you is part of the risk assessment. It seems that it's still ongoing. So hazard risk identification for sure. Risk analysis as well. Risk evaluation, risk control. Here we have not so many people, but still more than 50%. And recording and reporting is the smallest portion. Should I end the pool, or you're going to end the pool? Yes. So these are the results, right? It's finished yet? No. And so yeah, exactly. What does risk assessment include? And to be honest, if you have a look at several guidelines available worldwide, not always are seeing it the same. We started, how can I skip the pool now? I don't see it here. I'm very sorry, but yes. That's what not available for me. To be honest, very often risk identification or hazard identification, analysis and risk evaluation are the core processes within risk assessment. But in some approaches, you can see that also the controls and the recording are inside. But we started to very much use the international standard on risk management to set up what we mean by risk assessment. We are somewhere where we don't want to be. On my computer is my email box. And no, the presentation at all. Can I help you somehow, or is it good? Yeah. So we're back. It seems that we will struggle with the full questions a bit, but yeah. If you have a look here on the risk management process based on ISO 31000, it's quite clear in what the risk assessment is. Identification, analysis, and evaluation. And it's not about that we are not going to record and report our findings. That's something which is done for the whole process. It's not about that we will not cure the risk, so come up with some controls. But usually risk assessment as it is, it's, let's say, understanding the risks and the decision if it's acceptable or not acceptable for us, and also about setting the priorities. So where we want to focus on now, because that's the basement for decision making. But as I said, not all the frameworks see it like that. But as in Europe, we are very much dealing with the ISO standard 45001 for safety management system, which is now very much linked to ISO 31000. It started to make sense for us as well. No, you're not moving. Yes. I would like to show you a little bit the Czech approach, because as you probably know, within the European Union, when it's a directive, it means it shows you that just the direction and the overall goal. But it's on the member states to transpose this into their legislation and set the rules for their countries. So in Czech Republic, once we are dealing with the risk assessment, we have three key acts. First of all, it's a labor code, where it's the employer's responsibility to conduct a risk assessment of all the risks which are connected to the occupation or the workplace. Then we have another act where stated that once we are dealing with the risk factors, and here we can have a little bit different approach than how you can see it, because we have 13 well-defined factors what are of our focus, then they have to measure. They need to have a measured data for the decisions, and once they have it, they are responsible for conducting something which we call categorization of work or work categorization, which is more or less the assessment of occupational health risks. For a historical reason, in our country, we have the system overseeing occupational health and safety divided. We have two different ministries, one overseeing occupational safety, which is Ministry of Labor and Social Affairs, and one which is overseeing occupational health, Ministry of Health. We also have distinct inspection bodies. So once we are dealing with occupational safety and labor in general, we have a state labor inspection office and regional offices. And once we are dealing with occupational health, we have a regional hygienic stations. Also regarding the research, we have two distinct research institutes. One, the National Institute of Public Health, very much dealing with occupational health and also environmental health, and the Research Institute for Labor and Social Affairs, focusing on safety. And what is happening in Czech Republic is then that we really have the occupational health and safety in two silos. And I will just show you the key principles and where it works, but where it also doesn't work. The risk factors, I mentioned the 13, which I will define in our regulations, are these what you can see here. So from the chemical through the physical factors, ergonomics, also biological agents or an increased air pressure. So that's probably very common to you. And the key principle of work categorization is that we have a 4 category indicating the risk. 1 means no problem, let's say. 4 is very high risk. So from no adverse health effects to or high health risk, which cannot be completely managed through existing controls. Already in the 3rd category, the occupational exposure limits are exceeded, and we have repeated occurrences of occupational diseases. That's why the category number 3 and 4 are usually called in our legislation risky works. There is also one category called 2R, but it's not on the employer to categorize it. It's on the health authority, because once they think that even though you are giving them the evidence that you are in category 2, and they know from their expertise that you can be in a risky category, they can put you in 2R. The work categorization is closely connected to occupational health services. Based on the category and the age, we are setting the period for the regular checkup through the or in the area of occupational health services. So you can see that once you are in the 1st category and you are under 50, we are going once in 6 years. What is now changing in the Czech Republic, for a long time, this was compulsory. Now, for category 1 and 2, so-called non-risky works, we have it as a voluntary thing. So once the employer, but also employee wants it, they have to do it. For category 2R, 3, and 4, for the risky category, we have it compulsory for all. And so once you are in 2R and 3, every 2 years, for 4 it's every year. We also have a special category called professional risks, which is not closely connected only to the certain factors. The typical can be, for example, the forklift driver or the crane operator. So once we know that they are in a higher risk, also regarding the occupational injuries, we are also want that they see the doctor more often. So that's one connection with the work categorization. The other connection is through the regular supervision, because the representative of the occupational health service provider have a possibility, or have also we can see the responsibility to oversee the workplace. And once you are in a risky work, they need to come every 3 years for something like, it's not inspection really, but it's more like supervision, and they should give you the advice on the reassessment of your risk factors or your risks. Okay, so that's how it works in our country. And here's just an example for DAS where it works very well. There are a lot of epidemiology data behind, as we are very close to the mining industry, silica exposure, so there were also data for the decisions, and there are no doubts that this works for us. If you have a look on category 1, it means that the average whole shift dust concentrations, measured ones, are less than or equal 30% of permissible exposure limit. Once we are in category 4, where really the health authority will push you very much to get to category 3, is you are exceeding 3 times of the permissible exposure limit. But there are also risk factors where it doesn't work very well for us. And it's, for example, the mental stress. If you have a look on the definition of mental load in our regulation, you will see that we are dealing only with the 4 factors. Monotony, pace work, then the 3 shift of continuous working pattern, and carry down only at night. That's what we understood in our regulation by mental stress or psychological stress. Category, we here don't have 4 categories, only 3. So category 2 is that you are exposed to A, B, or C more than 4 hours per shift. Once you are in category 3, it means that you are simultaneously exposed to all the 3 factors, A, B, C, or you are working only at night. So that's how we see it. But I don't know if you're familiar with the ISO standard 45003 on the management of psychosocial risk. We know that there are many more factors, right? And the question is, so where it is? Because for sure, it's not in our approach within work categorization. So we are saying, okay, let's go to the labor code, because the labor code wants the employer and to carry out the risk assessment for all the risks. But that's not happening very often, because the safety persons have the idea that everything which is connected with the health is work categorization. So they're focusing only on the safety. So that's what I want to say. It's not about that work categorization doesn't work for us, but it brings some issues which we need to solve. We have the discussion with our inspectorates and health authorities, and we also are supporting the questions which we have in our head, because if we have a look on the statistics, and here I just put the numbers from 2023, but the trend is very similar for a long time. If you have a look on the cause of workplace accidents, most of them, and it's more than 90%, you will see they're poorly or inadequately assessed risk. So that's one question. Are we really doing it right? Because if yes, why we have this in our reports? And the other argument, which is a little bit like showing us that we have holes in our system, is if you have a look at the statistic on professional diseases, so you can see that more than 40% of diseases in the non-risky categories are with occurrence of occupational diseases. And especially for noise, vibration, and upper limb stress, it's still an issue. A lot of works which are non-categorized or are in category 2, means non-risky, are with the occurrence of occupational diseases. So that's are the frameworks, the approaches. If we have a look on the methods, first of all, I'm interested in which methods you are familiar with. We have I put a checklist, interview, a questionnaire, risk matrix, SMEA, or root cause analysis. Okay, so checklists are very, very field interviews as well. Risk matrix, we know them very well. SMEA, not a lot. It's more or less for the safety, and especially for the machinery safety or process safety, and root cause analysis also not too much, because the root cause analysis for a lot of people, it's just the tool for investigation of incidents. But if we want to learn from the incidents, then we can get a very good causes for our risk assessment, right? So it's connected. Thank you. You can I think you can skip this. Thank you very much. No, it's still there. I deleted both questions. I'm not usually working for me. I must say I'm using MS Teams for my online work, now the Zoom, and Zoom is somehow I'm struggling with all the time. So I don't know why, but yeah, this is something what happens to me. The typical methods, it was very nice a systematic review published in the Safety Science Journal in 2023. But I would say it's more about theory. You can find a lot of methods, also Bayesian networks and fuzzy modeling and so on. In practice, what we know from auditing and from the companies when we are doing the audits of the documentation or on-site, I would say these are the typical methods used in occupational safety and health. Checklists, questionnaires, risk matrices, risk indices. The difference, we'll have a look on that. SMEA or risk register, or the combination of both. So let's have a look just briefly on some of them, and I would like to point out some limitations we should be aware of. I'm sure you know the checklist, how to do it. I'm always saying that the good checklist, not all the checklists are good. And how to recognize the good one is about the structure. So it should be, it's not just questions, the questions should be grouped into categories. The statement should be clear and not covering more than one issue. Yes, no logic should be not interrupted. So always the answer should be yes or always no, otherwise it's a mess. And last but not least, once we are dealing with other than professional users, then we need to be illustrative. So all the pictures and explanatory notes make sense. Not for the occupational and health and safety professional maybe, but if we want the line managers to do it, then for sure. So that's just the checklist issue, and I would say it's also a difference between the checklist if it's a hazard or risk oriented, or if it's for auditing or non-compliance. And sometimes we are using the checklist which are for auditing, for controls, auditing, for the risk assessment, and there is not a clear message for that. The other methods where we'll use questions or interviews, I just use the example of the very robust Copenhagen psychosocial questionnaire, which is here from 2000, I think. But now we have already the third modification, and it's used throughout Europe. I don't know if you have experience with that. Yes, I see yes. It's very robust, but the validation is there, and you have a lot of examples from a very much different workplaces where it was already used. My colleagues at our faculty started to use it as well. But finally, to be honest, especially for smaller companies, they develop a smaller version of this question. But it's useful, and especially for psychosocial risk. Usually, we first of all starting with the questions, right? Risk matrices, as I saw in the full question, you know them very well, and there are different kinds of them. You can see I just give here the example from the Hearts and Minds, the booklet which was developed for the shell companies. You for sure know the one from your Canadian organization for safety and health. But are they the same? Which one is the one for my purpose? And here we come to really thinking about which matrix to use for my case, because they don't have the same resolution. Once we are dealing with a lot of different risks, maybe this won't be enough for us because most of the risks can be in one category. So how I will do the decisions further? We need to think like that. And also, very important aspect here is about the risk acceptance, because this tool, the risk matrix, is not only for the communication and display of the risk. It's also the tool for prioritization. That's the colors here, and it means that I need to understand this is for me not acceptable anymore. But for some approach, it can be one died person. For some, it's just a serious injury. And by selecting the risk matrix, you are also picking their acceptance to risk. And it's good to know that. Sometimes, the full question again. Donald will like me finally. I'm wondering about which type of risk matrix you are using in your daily practice. 4-4, so more the symmetrical, let's say, risk matrix 5-5, not applicable for your field. Yeah, it seems like 4-4 is very typical. I would say in Czech Republic, the most often we are using 5-5, but I will not tell you why. I think it's just because we have 5 fingers. That's what I'm always saying. So yeah, thank you very much. You can stop this. Yes, so just the message is there is just no one risk matrix, and you need to select one which fits your purpose. That's it. Sometimes you can also see something which we call risk index or risk indices. I think it's very common for your exposure sciences, and within Europe, we are very much using the Kini method. And the Kini method, if you have a look on the history, it was settled in the US at the Naval Weapons Center, as far as I know, 1976. And that's how Kini and Wirth really set the indices. What we can read from that is that they are interested in 3 parameters to assess the risks: likelihood, exposure, and possible consequence. And we don't know what's really behind the values because they work with some data behind. But what we can see very well is that their evaluation is consequence oriented, because consequence has the highest impact on the risk when you think about the risk as a combination of all of the three factors. And in Europe, we have a lot of modifications of the CUNY method. So once you are saying you're in Netherlands saying, oh, I'm using CUNY, and then you're in France using CUNY, you will use a different method with the different indices. And it's good to know how the indices were really developed, if it really makes sense for your purpose. Risk register, I think you probably also know something like a job hazard analysis, and it's more, I would say the philosophy of MEA is behind that. So you're thinking about what and how and what are the consequences. And this kind of risk register can help you to have a look on the activity, that's usually the starting point, through the hazard, scenario, impact, existing control measures, and then you're doing this assessment. And because we want to see if the controls are effective, we are repeating the procedures, and we're interested in residual risk as well. And I would say that's the most common approach which you can see in our discipline. Digital tools. Chris told me that I should also present a little bit of OiRA, which is a very European thing dealing with risk assessment. But they are actually not only OiRA. In Europe, there are two very similar tools. One is developed by a European Agency for Occupational Health and Safety, OSH, and the second one is developed by Ireland, HSA, it's a health and safety authority there. So they call it Be Smart. Very similar philosophy behind, which is about to give small and medium enterprises simplified solutions to support them in carrying out risk assessments. That's what's behind. And if we have a look on OiRA, it's a web platform which enables the creation of sectoral risk assessment in any language. So it's translated in the national languages. And it's really very user-friendly, but there is a standardized way how to do the risk assessment. So there is also the guidance behind on risk assessment. The web platform has two parts. You as a user can access only the OiRA sectoral tools, and we, as we were part of creation of the tools, we can also go to OiRA tool generator. It's developed and maintained by OSH, but the principle is that each member state are helping with developing the language-specific tools for their countries. So in our country, it was, for example, the Ministry of Labor and Social Affairs in cooperation with us and the research institute who were dealing with the tools. It's nice to see the methods behind, and I've already mentioned the CUNY, right? And it's exactly what is behind the OiRA, because they are it's based on the Dutch, and I think it was here. Yes, it's based on the Dutch risk assessment instrument, which is very well known as RIE, and you will not find a lot of information in English, only in Dutch. But if we have a look on the methods behind, they have modified CUNY. It's not the CUNY as I presented it at the very beginning from 1976. You see it's modified CUNY method, looking on probability, frequency, and effect, or the severity of the consequences. And that's on the developer, we can choose which approach is better for us, or the modified French method, which is dealing only with the two criteria, it's severity and frequency. So this is not you as a user can choose, but I as a developer just put it inside. You can, if you go to the web page and if you register for free, you can access different OiRA tools. You can select by country, available language for you, probably English, and the sector. But of course, there are some which are more general for the whole Europe, and as it's very much connected to the legal compliance, the EU legislation is behind. But then you will see they are sector specific, as I said, so you can find some for the hairdressers or small businesses or shop retails and so on. So it's usually very connected to the particular profession or job. How it looks if you go inside, it's more or less something like a checklist. Okay, so there are items, they call it risk statements. The risk statement is, for example, work always use the appropriate personal protective equipment. You are saying yes or no, and then you are selecting the priority of the risk. And there are different approaches. Again, it's about the one who developed the tool. They can just select the priority for you to decide low, medium, high, or you can assess the particular parameters, so the consequence and the likelihood and the exposure, or they put it as a default. So they will say, okay, this is usually high risk, and you can only work with that at the very end. You can change it, but not directly step by step. So that's, you're just going item per item, and there is always the question, is this relevant? Is this risk statement of your interest? And if not, you are going further. What I like on the OiRA are the outputs. There are 3 outputs which you can get from it. Risk assessment report, overview of risks, and action plan. Here you can see the overview of risks. It's good that it's with visuals. What is not very, I would say, user-friendly is the report, because it's not well structured, and we are dealing with that. But what is very helpful is the action plan, because that's the Excel sheet which you can generate directly from the tool, and it's really saying you, okay, so what is the description of the risk, even though they are describing the risk as a non-compliance with some controls, which I don't like personally. Then there is a risk priority, the measures which should be adopted from their libraries or your own, and then you can set also the responsible person and some deadlines for your further actions. So that was the one of the example of the digital tools which are usually available for quite a long time in the EU, but as you know, and I'm sure it's also part of your lessons, there are a lot of emerging technologies for occupational health and safety. There was a very nice global review presented, I think a couple of months ago by ILO, International Labour Organization. And they are coming with the key advancement in risk assessment. And we see that the potential benefits of wearables and real-time monitoring, especially for chemical exposures, artificial intelligence, machine learning, VR simulations, and VR education and training tools. We are, for example, using XVR. I don't know if you ever experienced that. It's very much for crisis management, but in XVR you can get to the real catastrophe, and there it's about to manage the situation from the point of view of the stakeholders involved. So you can be the head of the fire protection side, or you can be just a pedestrian or a civilist, let's say, and you can train the people how to make the decision in these high-risk environments. So it's really helpful. I already saw a very nice risk assessment tools with AI where you can just provide video of a particular part of your workplace, and based on the knowledge which is behind, they will tell you what is the risk there and what should be the priority. So a lot of it is ongoing. I would say huge progress is in the area of ergonomics, all the body postures, and I don't know what are the specific approaches which you have, but for example, when we are dealing with the local master strain, we are really counting the movements. We are making videos and counting the movements. Now it's not necessary anymore because somebody's counting the movements. And to be honest, there were a lot of mistakes with the counting. Now it's a bit better. So I want to say, the big advancements are here and will be probably helping us. but we should also be aware of some drawbacks, or let's say challenges, the ethical issues, data quality and bias, how to rely or not rely on that. And I would be happy if always we will be the person with the broad knowledge who has overseeing all the tools, because otherwise it can be really mess. We have the fourth question. So I'm just interested if you already use some digital tools and AI, maybe chatbots for risk assessment. So not in general, but for the risk assessment purposes. Yeah, so mostly no. Because I would say in Czech Republic we started to play a lot with that. And in the ergonomics there is still a lot of work to do to really use it efficiently. But there is a huge, I would say, support from the funding organizations to develop something. To conclude, I would say a risk assessment is still, from my side, the essential process or essential step for preventing both acute and chronic risks. In our case, maybe it's not the case of Canada, as far as I know, the historical split between occupational safety and occupational health is not helping us very much. If we are using any methods in our discipline, we should understand them very well, and we should be aware of the limitations they have. And from my side, I would say we need to put the safety and health people together, because the communication across discipline is necessary to have the overview picture of the risks and of the workplaces. I'm always saying that we are sharing the same goal, and it means that we are here to put a small piece to ensuring health and safety, and it's a very nice goal, even if you're a hygienist or the safety professional. My question, and it's the last question, it's more like a theoretical question. I don't know if you know the Vision Zero as a global initiative calling for a holistic approach for health, safety, and well-being. And my question is how far we really are from this vision. Because in Czech Republic, I think we have still a lot of work to do, but it makes sense because that's how we want the people who are coming back from work. That's how we want to support health, safety, and well-being in workplaces. So thank you very much. If you want to talk with me also online, because I'm here only for the next week, use this contact. I will be very happy to talk with you, and that's from me now.
Thank you very much, and I think